I remember as a child being too focused on myself and living in a world of peace and inner joy that I was able to create for myself, despite a not-so-happy family and condominium situation due to the fact that everyone in every house was sick, both physically and morally. Until a certain age, I never got involved with the outside world, although I made myself available to anyone who needed a hand. Today, I can definitely say that when they are young, all children experience similar situations. They are more aware of their divine greatness, and it has been proven that until they are about 5 years old, they have absolutely no fear of being hurt, because they consider themselves immortal. This was the real reason, combined perhaps with many other difficult ones to remember, that made me live peacefully at the beginning of my journey into Unreality. But when I was 6 years old, something happened that abruptly reawakened me, acting on my character, which subsequently took a purely reactionary turn, inducing me into a different state of mind from the previous one. I witnessed the disappearance of my brother of just over 6 months. The division from him brought me a suffering that only a mother could understand. The pain was great, and I felt as if a part of me flew away, very far away, abandoning me in a place I did not accept in the most absolute way. I was no longer happy with myself, because I noticed that I was different in dealing with the things of life compared to other ordinary beings. And first I quarreled with God, and consequently with my parents, particularly with my father, especially because of his tendency to irritability, accompanied by harsh educational attitudes that were unjust in my opinion. Thus began my first torments of unsuitability for the world, and every night I was assailed by deep doubts about the nature of man and his roles. If we insert similar thoughts into our minds, it is quite natural that we end up depending on the same thoughts that could block our proper growth. Thus, while my peers thought all year long about what to ask the Befana, in those days there was still no tradition of receiving gifts from Santa Claus, I did not consider the event at all, instead committing myself to focus on things that today I consider useless and destructive. Every mistake well analyzed and accepted always leads to enlightenment, and over time I have not regretted living my childhood in this way. Now I can say out loud that we can be equally happy and joyful no matter what circumstances we are experiencing, and that loving work toward ourselves as divine beings is the only way to salvation. After several years and studying with a searching attitude, he discovered a beautiful thing, which finally gave the right answers to my questions, and I understood the full value of contact with the divine within us, which is pure joy, and acts with attitudes contrary to the nature of man. We do not come to such realizations overnight, even when we find someone to explain them to us. I am glad that I directed my attentions to this research, as I would have been in the condition of those who live unconsciously today, and certainly would have gone through a series of situations that would have led me to conduct a passive experience. As a starting point, for a wise awakening, everyone can begin wherever they want. The important thing is to take the first step, which always turns out to be the most difficult thing to accept. My good fortune has been to be able to observe people's behaviors, never giving total credibility to their words. This seems to me the most important tip to communicate, and forgive me if you find me repetitive throughout the book, but it will end up benefiting you. When people talk to me about respect, love for all, and other such things, I certainly assimilated them while considering them as valid concepts, but I did not register the awareness of them. They could not remain engraved on my skin at the level of real emotions and feelings. For example, remembering Lucio Battisti, whose content of his songs almost everyone knows, we can point out that there was the singer's utmost awareness of certain themes. Since then, death caught him in despair and sickness, and not in a condition typical of a warrior of light. Through the message which he conveyed after departing from this earth, he wanted to confirm that a life truly lived is only so when we pay due attention to listening to true music and understand the proper meaning of the things of life. It follows that the sound of words is more important than the words themselves, that everything that happens to us must be analyzed as a coincidence to meditate on. I would like to thank Lucius for this, for his contribution of pure testimony needed by all those who have doubts about the continuity of life itself after death. What I want to explain with this example is quite difficult, and only deep meditation could be the teacher of it. As for me, I had already begun for several years the study related to the understanding of certain truths contained in music. I used to move like this by listening to the various musical messages. Real music can convey them and get the meaning across. With this, I find myself in agreement with Battisti posthumously. Indeed, the vibration of sound has the power to awaken awarenesses already inherent in us that can enlighten us about our mission to be accomplished, and it can still remove in us the memory of the personal project or dream of birth, which led us on our journey into Unreality. Music therapy is a good example of this today. I used to gasp and at the same time rejoice when listening to that song that speaks of the mystery that is locked within us, and sometimes I would join in unison with that melody. Let me preface this by saying that in those years of study, I had not yet been contacted by any entity, and therefore my journey followed lonely and desperate though unabated, as I was not aware of a divine plan for humanity, which I noticed to be increasingly inhuman and false. As for the meaning of things, the work was more challenging. For not knowing anyone who could inspire me, I turned to the study of interesting people who lived in the past. First, I analyzed the figure of Saint Francis, who enlightened my mind with the mania of giving everything to the poor. Very soon, I felt perfectly in tune with him, and in order to better understand the necessity of that way of doing things, I imitated him in my own small way, even though I did not have rich parents like him, and for that reason, I donated only what belonged to me. To understand the meaning of these things, one must, in my opinion, immerse oneself in the fullest emotion of the experience itself. By now, I am aware that inner joy will never be the consequence of having but only of giving. This first step changed my way of seeing things, and I returned to savoring the sweetness of simplicity. The focus on Saint Francis led me to a real falling in love with Jesus. And such an inner contact can be understood if we feed our being with all that respect for the great teacher of all times and for the marvelous work of light, which he did in the blackest darkness, to indicate the plan of salvation of all humanity. Living in contact with the meaning of life expressed by Jesus' behavior, I have assimilated the realization that we can all restore that Christ-like attitude in our thoughts, so that we can succeed on our own in unmasking the real enemies within us. We should not be ashamed to imitate his loving example. The blessing that followed was my initial respect for Heavenly Father, and consequently for my father and mother. I slowly realized that it was I myself who had chosen them as earthly parents, as I pointed out, in them, some of the positive attitudes I noticed in myself. Not only that, but I could see those unfulfilled dreams of theirs and the various reasons why. You cannot imagine how important it can be to understand these things. It is as if a new charge urging me to carry on their qualities from a more spiritual point of view. My father, in fact, could not make it out of the consequences of a rigid upbringing without respect for the child himself. When you become psychic, after expressing your sensitivity, so many things appear clear, because you live with detachment and without attachment to your earthly life. In choosing my father, I wanted to evolve his repressed states of mind, which I identified in art, science, and spirit, along with that sacred respect he had for work. Studying and admiring my mother, on the other hand, led me to understand the need to feel truly alive in laying down one's life for others, starting with the children themselves. In order to evolve her birth dream, I had to continue to grow within myself all the strength needed to face commitments and decisions. If we want to talk about real inheritance, and certainly not the illusory one related to material goods, I think we have to educate ourselves to see our parents in this aspect. Because beyond all that we receive from them, and beyond all that we would like to receive from them, there is the hand and therefore the presence of the divine, which is within them and which I think is useful to discover in order to give serious values to the very necessity of our permanence in this world. Chance does not exist, and our parents represent special coincidences that come to us to illuminate this path of ours. Respect for parents never has an expiration date, and even when they are gone, let us always remember that something deeper and indivisible unites us with them. We are their evolution, and our children will be ours. When this concept enters everyone's mind, we will be able to live in an atmosphere of true respect, and no one will have to suppress their individuality, helping us to work with more harmony. Then there is no attachment of dependence whatsoever. And if the relationship between children and parents improves, it will be solely because, first of all, the knowledge of our real matrix that gave rise to us will have been restored, and that is God, Father, Spirit, love. These are, in my opinion, the vitally important necessities that need to be taught in words and practical demonstrations to all new generations, as a point of reference to prevent the common discomforts of addiction to smoking, alcohol, drugs, weapons, sex, and finally the lust for power. These realizations may one day make more evident the concept of freedom that is participation without any discrimination, starting with mutual respect between children and parents. Looking back in time, we can see how many things have improved in this regard, but we can do more because more can be given, only if we decide not to let go of time through the hours spent in front of the television, video games, or attached to the telephone. Let us therefore abandon that sense of loneliness we think we have that can lead us exclusively away from ourselves. There is no loneliness when you are alone. Those who have already understood how things are will contrarily try to self-schedule small spaces to devote to companionship with themselves in order to be enriched with more love, being able to live as givers and not as beggars. On this subject, there would be much to tell, but I will stop here. In this eternal instant, I have promised myself to finish this book by Christmas, the last of this century, because I would like to celebrate it with the present work, in the hope of being able to give a ray of sunshine. Let us give each other our qualities, and certainly the beginning of a new life on this earth will not be a utopia. If you have been able to follow me this far, surely it has not been out of pure curiosity. A coincidence has simply been created that will induce you to experience even more certain concepts all encompassed in that magical Christmas atmosphere, which even today, beyond any overly materialistic interpretation, we continue to breathe. We can all downsize our lifestyle in the sense of sobriety by learning to live more simply. It is a tough and difficult talk, but there is no other way. Then we could continue to make all the excitement and magic of Christmas live in our hearts every day, in every moment of our lives, and this will eventually become a true act of pure joy and immense vitality.